Hello, everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays, free version of Webinar Wednesdays. We have our free webinar today. My name is Erin Kuhns, and I am the Manager, Education and Training at CAGP. And I thank you all for joining us today. I'm really thrilled to introduce Dr. Carla Funk, presenting Myth-Busting Research, Philanthropy is Good for Business. Just before I turn everything over to Carla, I wanted to mention a few things. Please submit your questions anytime in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen on the control panel. Carla will have several points during the webinar where she will stop and answer questions. You're also welcome to email her afterward if she isn't able to get to your question today. This webinar is worth 1 CFRE credit, and as with all of our webinars, today's presentation will be recorded, and you will be receiving an email with a link to the recording. You can access a PDF of the presentation, the CFRE points tracker sheet, as well as Carla's bio in the Dropbox folder, which was, the link was included in the email that I had sent out to you. So thank you so much for being here today, Carla. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Sounds great, Erin. Thanks so much, and hi, everybody. Today, we're going to focus on the business aspect of strategic charitable giving in Canada. We all know that it takes more than just charitable organization staff to land those transformational gifts. Donors need legal advice, financial planners and portfolio experts, and tax accountants, along with that charitable expertise. So we're going to take a quick look at findings from 2014 research, and then we're going to dig into this current research, which resulted in the report, Doing Good for Business. I'm going to pay special attention to the implications of the findings, not just for professional advisors, but for all of the philanthropic sector. What does this mean for you, whether you're part of a foundation, a charity, or if you're a professional advisor? And I know with CAGP, the audience is often more represented by charities. For you, I want you to think back, and I know this happened to me. Think back to that day when you've been working steadily with the donor, everybody's excited about some charitable intent that's going to be happening, and you say you're going to need either legal advice, accounting advice, financial advice, or all three, usually all three, and your donor comes back and says their advisor doesn't think that their charitable intent is a good idea. Your disappointment, their disappointment. I hope today what you're going to gain is a little bit of insight into the business of advisors and how to potentially avoid some of those disappointments by working better together. And why is my laptop not letting me? There we go. The research was supported by 6 partners: CAGP National Office, Alberta South Chapter, Greater Vancouver Chapter, Philanthropic Foundations Canada, the Vancouver Foundation, and the Toronto Foundation. And the research looks closely at those advisors with an active role in the conversation on strategic charitable giving in Canada. So we keep hearing the demographics are shifting in Canada and the baby boomers are making plans to transfer wealth to the next generation. Well, apparently, according to the research and the advisors that I interviewed, it's here now. It's definitely starting. So when wealth gets transferred, this clearly poses an opportunity for those professionals that are able to provide guidance to their clients about their charitable intent. I think of this as a four-legged stool. Charities, tax accountants, lawyers, and financial planners are all key players. They're all part of a holistic approach for strategic giving in support of communities in Canada. With charitable giving going way beyond a relationship with the donor and the release of a check that it used to be probably 15 years ago, professional advisors are in a really strong relational situation with potential donors to charities. and this puts them at a real advantage. They've been those trusted partners in amassing and management of wealth, and it stands to reason that they will also be in a strong position to help their clients at this stage of their wealth transfer. But we know that they can't do it without charity partners with a strong understanding of the needs of the communities to help guide the giving. So I'm going to come back to that whole holistic idea and thinking. Most of what I'll be speaking about today is found in the research report, Doing Good for Business, and it was released last fall. You can find it on the CAGP website. The webinar gives us the opportunity to dig just a little deeper and provide all of you with the opportunity to ask questions about the research and the findings. And please go ahead and post your questions as they come along, and Erin's going to read them at specific times in this presentation. Just make sure you ask them when they're fresh in your mind. And before we dive in, I wanted to take a minute to tell you about myself. Why did I do this research, and how am I qualified to take it on? After a decade of working overseas in international development in Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Switzerland, I returned to Canada for family reasons and landed up in Victoria. And it was there that I started working with a BC Land Trust nonprofit, and I quickly realized that they could hardly afford to pay me or anyone else in the organization. And when I raised my concerns, they signed me up as a fundraiser. So like many of you, I see myself as an accidental fundraiser that is passionate about causes. The fact that I immediately took on legacy giving rather than, say, events or membership drives should tell you how naive I was about the complexities of strategic charitable giving. But the CAGP Bootcamp course in Calgary, and then the conference in Calgary in 2004 set me up for success. And I've been a dedicated either local or national board member ever since. My research qualifications come from having recently finished a PhD looking at philanthropic international development aid. I spent 2 winters in Tanzania doing my research, which was amazing. And now I steer an international development organization using the findings of that research. As anybody that's worked with me inside or outside of CAGP knows that one of my favorite questions is why? That's not always a safe question to ask in an organization, but when you do research, it's a really safe place where curiosity doesn't kill the cat. So back to the research. In 2014, a survey was done to look at high net worth giving behaviors and motivations, as well as the philanthropic conversations that people had with their financial advisors. The results for the survey came out in this report, and if you haven't read the Philanthropic Conversation, check it out. It's really full of interesting insights. One of the findings that stood out particularly was a significant gap between what professional advisors thought they were providing in terms of service to their high net worth clients and what their clients thought about the charitable services provided. While the majority of advisors indicated they had conversations on charitable giving with their clients, the clients told a different story, saying only a very few advisors raised the topic. In fact, 90% of financial advisors reported that they discussed philanthropy or charitable giving with their high net worth clients, but only 13% of clients reported having such discussions. That is huge. 90% perceived to 13% actual. This is a gap worthy of special attention. And this is really something that professional advisors would want to sit up and pay attention to. Particularly, there is an estimated $750 billion expected in the transfer of wealth in the next decade. And so professional advisors might want to consider in their own practice that, and charities and foundations might want to get a better understanding as they gear up for stewarding these greater number of gifts from high net worth donors. CAGP and supporters of this research thought it was important enough of a gap to warrant further research, and they wanted to pay special attention to this gap. When the supporters of the research approached me to look at it, we agreed that it's much less productive to look at what's not happening and rather to look at those professional advisors that have incorporated philanthropy into their business. What makes these people basically the special unicorns of the philanthropic sector? In research, we call these people positive deviants. But in case they took offense, I decided not to call our very worthy advisors deviants or unicorns. Chip and Dan Heath, authors of Switch, call these people bright spots. We wanted to hear from those very special professionals. In particular, what motivated their focus on charitable giving? We were hoping they might be able to share some numbers, like how much of their income could be attributed to their attention to philanthropy. We were also fully prepared for interviewees to tell us that they simply did this out of the goodness of their hearts, that this was their own way of giving back to civil society in Canada, to their community, that like most of us in the nonprofit world, it helped them feel better about their work and make it have meaning, more meaning. So in this research, which was qualitative research, we asked, how has the incorporation of philanthropy impacted the business and practice of professional advisors? And what is the value proposition of this inclusion? To answer these questions, I interviewed portfolio managers, wealth and estate planners, insurance brokers, financial business development managers, estate planning lawyers, and tax accountants from Vancouver to Halifax. 13 professional advisors were identified by their peers as having successfully incorporated philanthropy and strategic charitable giving into their business practice. We had to limit the number of individuals I could interview, but of course there are so many more. This set of bright spots represent diversity, not only in the profession or type of advisors, but also the diversity in gender, size of business, length of time as professional advisors engaged in philanthropy, and also their location across the country. These individuals represent an accumulative 360 years as working professional advisors, with a total of 156 years specializing in charitable planning. If these people were one person, they'd be really old and they'd be really smart. They're not only one person, though. These are professional advisors with a distinct difference. They have a reputation for having successfully incorporated strategic charitable gift planning and philanthropy into their business practice. So if there's any questions that anyone would like to ask about how we set up the research, this would be the time to ask.
So, Carla, I have a question. How did you pick who to interview, and why aren't they all CAGP members?
Good question. First of all, we would love all of the talented advisors that we interviewed to have been CAGP members, but as you recall, the funding for this project came from the philanthropic sector, and we chose colleagues that were identified from across Canada, regardless of their membership. And how we selected them was on the basis of basically it was sort of a blind thing where we got those 6 organizations, the representatives of those organizations, to present or put forward 6 names each. And then what I did was I went through those names and made sure that we had a lot of diversity. And then we took at the national level, we wanted to make sure that we had representation of different types of organizations. So it was a kind of a blind process. And I know a lot of really good names got simply deleted because we already had people from that side of the country, or we needed more diversity with gender or whatever. Good question, though.
Thanks. That was it for questions for now.
Okay, good. Thanks, Erin. I move on to what we found. The advisors we interviewed agreed that there is a strong business case for including philanthropic conversations in their client service offerings. When I asked them to give me a monetary value, their answers really surprised me. Rather than using words like net worth or monetary value, liquidity, or market returns, or throwing a whole bunch of numbers at me, these seasoned professional advisors used words like magic, soul, and wait for it, yes, you're probably not going to believe this either. Well, I certainly didn't. The word love. They consistently use terms such as magic, soul, and love when describing the effect of philanthropy on their business. They described the creation of a sticky business by tapping into the hearts and souls of their clients. And in the process of having these conversations, they tended to share their own hearts and souls. Those interviewed are in agreement that the business value proposition was virtually impossible to quantify. They asked me, how do you quantify the shared moments of truth that bind your clients to your service? How do you quantify the glue that keeps your books intact, not just through your client's lifetime or the advisor's lifetime, but sometimes in some cases in perpetuity? While they may not have been able to quantify the long-term effects of philanthropy, strategic charitable giving is a solid component of each of their practice as a trusted advisor. One advisor describes charitable giving as a highly integrated to her client's service, with 100% of their business focused on philanthropy. Another advisor described the donor-advised funds, which is a philanthropic tool, as the ultimate revenue stream for his practice. Another thing all the advisors agreed on is that the demand for philanthropic services is on the rise. Whether it's due to the tremendous increase in wealth of their clients over the past decades, or maybe it's the increase in awareness of the needs in society, or the natural evolution of an aging clientele who are forced to start thinking about the ultimate distribution of their wealth. With a rise in focus on charitable giving by their clients, these professionals warn others in the industry that if they ignore this, they do it at their peril. One advisor describes charitable giving conversations as a defensive tactic. If I'm not talking to them about this, somebody else probably will. And as opposed to me making money, I'm actually at risk of losing that client. If your practice is not built on strong client relationships, advances in technology such as robo-advisors can threaten your client base. This is kind of like what it is to be a charitable fundraiser. We know that relationships are a really huge part of what it is that we do. But there is a large value added demonstrated when an advisor assists in the complex unwinding of a client's lifetime of accumulated wealth for distribution. A robo-advisor simply can't take you through that transition phase, just as you can't just figure out charitable intent without advice from a charity. All of the advisors have seen a rise in the demand for philanthropic services, and that's been taking the philanthropic conversation from a niche role to a mainstream activity. One advisor noted that there is an entire industry being built around philanthropy in Canada today. And what about the book of business? Aren't advisors going to see those erode by philanthropy? Advisors told me that if a client is already philanthropic and you don't assist them in transitioning their wealth to charities, those assets will be distributed outside of your management over a lifetime of philanthropic activity. This actually represents an erosion of the advisor's book of business. Through the use of in-house foundations and donor-advised funds, financial advisors have found they can assist the client in their charitable goals while at the same time maintain the funds on their books. Wayne Truscott pointed out, you can either step up and decide to assist in whatever way you can, or slowly watch your business deteriorate over the course of a client's lifetime. I'm going to move back to Erin for some questions.
Okay, so here's one. Did anyone tell you how much they had made? Sorry, let me try that again. Did anyone tell you how much they made that was attributed to philanthropy? And if so, how much?
Right. So the first person I interviewed did tell me, because I probably was eager to, really dig down into those numbers and get a true quantitative sense, even though it's qualitative research, a quantitative sense of what does this actually mean? What is the value proposition? After that first person told me what the number represented in their advisor business, I interviewed 12 more people, and they're the ones that said, I can't tell you that. It's just, it's so integrated in what we do, and it's so much what attracts business to our firm, or it's so much that makes us that trusted advisor that we end up having conversations about all kinds of things that never would have happened before. And so rather than put that one person on the spot, I never did divulge how much it was. And I noticed when at the CAGB conference, we moderated a panel on this, that same advisor was asked the very same question, how much did you make on this? And he basically declined to answer the question. I think it's a really important question to answer, but I think it's something that we need to take on in a more quantitative way. In other words, we need to do a survey and ask a whole bunch of people rather than put one advisor on the spot. But good question, because it really is the difference for attracting the advisors to get it, what this means for their business and their practice.
And I do have a couple more questions, Carla.
Sure.
What is the best way to connect with financial advisors and let them know about your cause?
Great question. I think I know what I did, and maybe I'm sure others will have great ideas about this. I made an absolute point of always seeking out advisors. They often have seminars that they give on say their practice. So, if you have somebody that is a financial advisor, they often will put on public community conversations in your neighborhood, and they'll advertise those in their community newspapers. I attended those, a lot of them. And what I did was I approached them afterwards, told them about my organization, told them about CAGP, told them about philanthropy. And if I ever had an opportunity in the Q&A in a public way, I would always ask, what kind of services do you provide your clients on philanthropy? What kinds of strategic charitable giving information do you have? Tried really hard not to put them on the spot, because a lot of them feel very threatened. I shouldn't say them. You won't get tax accountants doing these kinds of meetings, but it's usually financial planners that are trying to expand their portfolio, their book of business. And the other thing I did was go to lawyers who I knew were did incorporate philanthropy, and I asked to meet with them and would meet at their office and would ask if they would allow me to leave brochures of our organization in their office, and often they do and would be really helpful. The key, okay, here's the key. Advisors are business people. They don't want you to waste their time. That's the key that I found. I'm thinking back here, and sorry, not answering the question as well I could have. They don't want you to waste their time. So if you can demonstrate that you understand from a legal perspective some of the strategic issues about estate planning, say, then go and see a lawyer and ask a few questions based on your organization. You're already establishing some rapport, and that lawyer or that tax accountant will actually give you the time of day next time you call them and say, I have a question that a client really needs to have answered, because that represents an opening for them, an opportunity for new clients, or it just broadens their own understanding about charitable giving. Do you think I've answered that, Erin?
I think so. I do have one more question before you continue.
Sure.
How do you account for bias with the selected population?
Well, if this were a quantitative analysis, there would be absolute questions about bias. Because this is qualitative research, in other words, what we did was we took out as much, in fact, we have a bias, and our stated bias is we're looking for people that do incorporate philanthropy in their business practice. So that's our first bias. Our second bias is we're looking for diversity, and the diversity is gender, location, age of the organization. So are you just starting up, or have you been in practice for decades? The age of the advisor, etc. So the difference being, this isn't a survey. This is a deep dive into a biased population. What we really wanted to look at is those, in research terms, positive deviance. So we're looking at the tail end of a normal distribution. So if this were quantitative analysis, wow, guilty as charged. There's huge bias. Because this is qualitative research, I explicitly expressed what the biases are and how we did the selection process. And so hopefully the bias is not biased in terms of who you know, which it isn't, because everybody threw their names in, and several names came up multiple times from the 12 people that put forward the names. And yet the bias needs to be explicit in research like this. But great question, for sure.
Thank you. I think you can continue.
Okay. So we hear that philanthropy is good for business. How exactly is that true? Conversations with clients that go beyond the purely monetary open up opportunities and generate positive ripple effects for the advisor's practice, for the firms, and for the community. When you take an interest in the client beyond portfolio gains and losses, you fundamentally change the client relationship. Bob Goldman says, when you talk to them about what's important to them in their life and their family and their legacy and their values, I guarantee they will be with you for life because you get it. You understand them. This is something that nonprofit and foundation leaders need to understand as well, because this is an opportunity for you to direct donors to those advisors that understand charitable intent. Seek them out. Those are the ones that have had the aha moment and are really seeking information from you and wanting to learn about the charitable organizations in their community. Philanthropy offers strategic solutions to help clients transfer businesses, assets, and wealth to the next generation. This is happening in great numbers right now, and there are strategies that all clients can use, not just the ultra high net worth or the high net worth clients. But the truly wealthy share a unique problem. I know none of us can completely relate to the following statement or comment, but many ultra high net worth clients are worried that they have too much wealth to share with only one family. I heard this from a couple of advisors, by the way, in case you're saying, oh yeah, sure. These people, these ultra high net worth clients, are afraid that they will negatively impact their children and grandchildren if they pass on the massive wealth that they have accrued. They may not even be particularly philanthropic and yet realize they need to find charities to help them solve this situation. Solving problems for clients doesn't always mean dollars and cents. It can also be a lot more personal than that. So one advisor commented, if you're not paying attention to charitable giving, it means you're not being as comprehensive in your professional services as you should be. Advisors point to the growth of their practice through referrals from having attracted like-minded people. As one advisor said, philanthropy is a way to differentiate yourself from everyone else out there in a really positive way. And that's a lot of where the stickiness comes from. When you differentiate yourself in a positive way, it attracts people that have the same values. And when you're showcased in the community for having facilitated a gift that will impact those in need, you can't help but add a shine to your business profile. And often you won't be showcased. You're the advisor in the background that has helped make this happen. But those clients know, and those clients have dinner parties that talk about who helped them create their charitable intent that they're so proud of. As mentioned before, more and more of these advisors are seeing that those deeper conversations about philanthropy is opening up revenue generating opportunities. Many of the advisors are leading their conversations with philanthropy. And when recruiting, they're interviewing for their firms with the lens of philanthropic interest and experience as an essential requirement for a job with the firm. That's worth repeating as well, in the sense that in a firm with a professional advisor, so often it's been on your technical knowledge. Do you have a BA in commerce? Do you have the right credentials? And are you capable of doing the licensing requirements? And now a requirement is, do you have philanthropic interest and experience? Because that's essential in order to get a job with the firm. So the advisors that I interviewed say you risk an erosion of the books that you manage if you're not having the philanthropic conversation. The flip side of this is that by having the conversation through the use of donor-advised funds and in-house foundations, an advisor can continue to manage philanthropic funds for at least a decade, and sometimes for the firm in perpetuity. Philanthropy helps an advisor create a sticky business. I like that word, sticky business, when one of them used it. So what is it? It's the relationship most fundraisers have when we're speaking with donors. It's about exciting the client. It's inspiring loyalty through families down the generations about something they're interested in. It generates referrals that attracts high net worth clients. One advisor calls it the halo effect of charitable giving. These are the benefits of having deep and meaningful conversations with clients about their charitable goals. They don't always want to talk about what kind of percentage their money made that month or that quarter. The fact that advisors interviewed love their job is not to be undervalued. These people love going to work. They love meeting their clients. They find their work is more stimulating, fun, and philanthropy helps cut through some of the cynicism that they developed in the workplace. Two of the advisors told me that if they had not incorporated philanthropy in their practice, they were on the way out. They were starting to get bored with their practice. These increased job satisfaction is such a great benefit to the advisors, but also to the firm. Erin, are there any questions that have come up?
Yes, I do have something here for you. What's the difference between in-house foundations and any other foundation, and why does it make a difference?
That's a really interesting question, and I didn't fully understand it when I started this research. I thought a foundation is a foundation, but it's not. So the difference is that if you have a community foundation or a private foundation, the community foundation basically is really invested in the community and wants to ensure that the community at large is gaining benefit and meeting the true needs of the community through philanthropic intent. That's the primary objective of those foundations. Private foundation usually has their own charitable intent. So it could be specific to something like a disease, or it could be an area, say the arts. So they have already got their charitable intent in thinking, or it could be very broad, but it's from a specific family. And so those I'll set to one side. What I'm calling here in-house foundations, and they're called different things. It can get very confusing when you try to read up on this. But in-house foundations are, I'm not trying to pick on any one organization, but it's just the one that popped into mind, is if you have the Scotia Bank, their in-house foundation is, I believe, Aqueduct Foundation. So if you have a financial planner who is affiliated with Scotia Trust and you have charitable intent, that advisor won't erode their book of business if you say transfer stock from their books to Aqueduct Foundation, because they're also in that in-house foundation, those are managed by Scotia Trust. So it really changes. This is really important thing for charities to understand, is that's, and donors to understand, that's the key difference, is that Aqueduct, and I'm again not picking on them at all, I'm sure they do amazing charitable work, but Aqueduct is their primary intent in being organized was to provide their advisors with an opportunity to transfer their book of business into a foundation, and then they have professionals within Aqueduct that will then distribute those on to charitable organizations, other charities that are actually implementing. So they may, it adds that extra just little bit layer of a middleman And you can see why clients, donors, clients to Scotia Trust have trusted Scotia with their money. They've trusted that advisor over the last 30, 40 years. Why wouldn't they trust them now to then transfer the money to a foundation that allows them to access some of these strategic charitable giving tools? So that's like a donor advised fund within Aqueduct Foundation. Is that clear, or is that, and maybe Erin, you can help me out. Did I make that really clear?
I think so, but just to remind people, if the person who asked wasn't, like, if somebody's not sure, they can still email you afterwards if they need clarification or anything, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I do have another question that's come up.
Oh.
The question is, what are some differences between a successful advisor and not?
Ooh, a successful advisor. I would say it depends on what your definition of success is. So for me, if we're talking strictly in the philanthropic sense, a successful advisor is someone that is comfortable in having a philanthropic conversation, comfortable in having a conversation that goes beyond the portfolio and moves into realms of what are you going to do with all of this money when you pass on? This is going to have to be disposed of in one shape or another. Having a successful advisor would have at their fingertips at least the knowledge of what are those philanthropic tools that can be used so that their clients can explore their charitable intent with the confidence that it's going to be good for their estate. It's going to be good for their kids. They're going to have everything set up really clearly and with no questions or dubious, areas that could be contested later, so that it's clear, well communicated, that if you're an advisor in one specific area, that you draw from others so that you build together that holistic four-legged chair that I showed before, that really builds a great solid package for the donor, for their charitable intent, as well as for their financial stability for themselves as they live the rest of their lives, and also to be true to their heirs, to their children and grandchildren, should they have any. And just, and if they don't, and if they're not comfortable or don't feel they have the right knowledge, a successful philanthropic advisor, somebody that has embraced this, would seek out others that can help them. So in other words, if you're super successful at the financial end of things, but really not comfortable with the charitable aspect, seek out somebody that you can collaborate with in order to share clients, even if it's within your own firm. Is somebody in your firm, is that their area of expertise or interest? And share that information or share that client's intent to build the best possible package, a holistic package for their high net worth clients, for all of their clients. It doesn't even have to be the high net worth or the ultra high net worth. Every client I got when I was working with a small land trust, we very, very sadly got a estate package back where we'd been left a percentage of an estate of a 26-year-old man. It was $7,500. That's not a lot of money, but boy, was it meaningful to his parents who were so grieving. So that's a successful advisor in a philanthropic sense.
Thank you so much, Carla. That's it for questions for this segment, so I'll let you continue.
Okay, thanks. So what does this mean for you? Professional advisors, we know if you're listening today, you're probably already finding ways to have the philanthropic conversation with your clients. Since you play such a vital role in brokering the charitable wealth transfer, in order to offer a comprehensive suite of services, it is really strategic from a business perspective to gain a solid understanding of the philanthropic sector. Failing this, probably like I just answered in the question earlier, find other advisors that specialize in this and collaborate with them. Charitable intent of clients has become increasingly important. Sorry, that was my slide. Charitable intent of clients has been increasingly important, and it would be a terrible mistake to ignore this opportunity. For charities, understanding the key role of professional advisors will help you navigate complex wealth transfer gifts. Do you know about those various strategic giving vehicles? Have you invested time and energy to be able to speak at least somewhat knowledgeably on the topic? That's going to be the key in being able to attract and impress and stick with certain advisors that actually get this. And then point your donors to the various partners that need to make a strategic gift happen. Building relationships with the advisors that get it will help tremendously in building that holistic approach to wealth transfer for the donor. So seek out those bright spots and work with them. Understand the advantages and disadvantages to the donor and to the advisors in terms of which vehicles are being used. It is complicated, but it really isn't. It's complicated, but once you understand the terminology, once you just get a handle on things like, deemed disposition and triggering tax implications. What triggers tax implications? If you get a gist of the terminology, you'll be so much better able to work with these trusted advisors, and they will take the time for you because they know that they're not having to educate you first and then speaking to you about some of the advantages that they can offer. For foundations, is the increased involvement of professional advisors good for foundations? More specifically, are donor-advised funds, remember the example I used, Scotia Trust and Aqueduct, again, not pointing a finger at them, just an example that I used. Are these a threat to foundations, or are these an opportunity? So the use of in-house donor-advised funds by advisors with a pre-existing deep relationship with clients could potentially divert funds from community foundations that specialize in those community needs. The greatest strength of community foundations is their deep understanding of philanthropy, of community development, and of the needs of the community. An organization like Aqueduct will never be able to compete with the very intact and deep relationships that those community foundations have embraced. So continue on with leadership in those areas and embrace the advisors with values-based philanthropy at the heart of their practice. And that will include those in-house foundations, those donor-advised funds. Those are equally a threat if you look at them that way, but if you educate yourself and embrace the knowledge of it and really continue on in leading in your own community, these will, I think, absolutely create more opportunities because the advisors in places like Scotia Trust will simply be opening more doors to philanthropy and to charitable intent. And the fact that they're funneled into Aqueduct first shouldn't be a threat. It should be an opportunity. By seeing this as a glass half full scenario, we need to find ways to continue to work with the advisors to put those donor advised funds to the best use possible for the community, no matter who we are. And when it comes to donors, we all have a responsibility. Donors need to be informed, and this can be really tricky stuff to navigate. Don't underestimate what we as charities already know about the community need alone, also about strategic charitable giving and the different approaches. They're going to be relying on trusted advisors from the entire four-legged stool. And if you can give them that four-legged stool with four trusted advisors, that holistic approach to their charitable giving will be so much stronger. Be an advisor that gives the straight goods to our donors. And I mean that from all perspectives. And on a different note, the advisors, just more for an understanding for charities, those of you that work with charities, one thing I learned is the advisors with the most knowledge about a client's finances are the tax accountants. And it just didn't occur to me in that way. I always kind of thought that they were all equally important, but tax accountants have all the facts about what is required because they're the ones that do the reporting for CRA. So if you're talking to a financial advisor, sometimes high net worth, ultra high net worth donors have assets they haven't even told their financial planners about. And same goes with the legal advice that they sometimes get. But the tax accountants know everything that a donor has. And interestingly, also, accountants, along with estate lawyers, are those with the least vested interest. So if you have a four-legged stool and you have trusted advisors, but you don't know anybody that are the players here, you can know that the lawyers and the tax accountants are the ones that don't have a vested interest. So it's the charities and the financial advisors that have something to gain. So the charity obviously gains if there's charitable intent, and they don't stand to lose dollars if it's like an advisor who's looking to not make their dollars erode from their book of business. And also, of course, the whole idea of vested interest in donor advised funds that are in-house or in private or community foundations, the difference between those three. So understanding that in that four-legged chair, the vested interest is clearly on, the one leg that is charity, but also it's on the financial advisor that have an in-house foundation. And the ones with the least vested interest are those that are the lawyers and the accountants. But by bringing together a team of really trusted advisors, you really want to build the most holistic approach to giving, and that is clearly in the donor's best interest. And then it's in all of our best interest, really. So in conclusion, in our siloed office world, let's not forget to reach out to each other, to seek out those bright spots in our communities. People that get it, the four-legged stool builds the most robust transformational gift. Charity leaders seek out special advisors. Advisors learn more about what's happening in your community and how your clients can give back in this impactful way. If you're a professional advisor sitting on the fence about whether learning more about philanthropy and how to have a truly meaningful conversation with your client, your colleagues are telling you that there's a huge opportunity for your practice to both shine and become sticky. The only better time to start was yesterday. So start today by signing up to more CAGB courses and seeking out colleagues and local nonprofits to learn those ropes. If you're already doing this, well, keep going, because you're the bright spots that lead the way for all of us. Because as we found from this research, not only will you be a happier and more satisfied advisor by incorporating philanthropy in your practice, it's just also quite simply a good value proposition. Philanthropy is just simply good for your business, according to these 13 financial planning professional advisors. And I have time for some more questions and wrap it up.
I do have a couple of questions, actually. So first is just trying to, there we are. Okay, so I seem to have right here in front of me 3 questions.
Good.
First one, are charities able to recommend financial advisors that have a philanthropic focus?
You know, I know that people, yes, they are. People tend to get a little bit worried about, you know, how this works. Absolutely. If a financial planner is having a conversation, and a deep and meaningful conversation with their client, what are they going to do? They're going to talk about their own stories, who they listened to, who spoke to them, who inspired them, what their own philanthropic intention is. A lot of the people I interviewed don't just come from this at a business values prospect sort of way. They come from it from a deep, you know, my dad was philanthropic, my family supported X, Y, and Z, my child needed support and was given support. They come from it with their own personal stories. And so they're never going to, or they said to me, they're never going to lead the client into giving to a particular organization, but they'll certainly share the stories of those charities that have inspired them. Yes.
Super. I have another question. I might be off base on this, but there was a correlation between the love an advisor showed a charity based on mission and size. But was there? Okay, let me try that again. I might be off base on this, but was there a correlation between the love an advisor showed a charity based on mission and size? I can imagine a local hospital university getting an easier entry into this world. They have the contacts and clout already, while smaller, more niche charities, for example, rarer diseases, might not get as much attention. Any thoughts, ideas on how to still strike up that conversation?
Yeah, and you know, the thing is, we all struggle with this. I worked with the land trust and environment when it wasn't on anybody's radar at all. Now the tables have turned, climate change talk and concerns, the environment is high on everybody's list, but when I was there, no, it wasn't. And the same thing with First Nations issues that I was trying to help an organization with. So, you know, endangered languages of First Nations is what I was working on. Who cares about that compared to, say, a large hospital foundation that's treating sick kids? That's clearly some of these charitable intents are more universal than others. There's no question. I guess the key for that is to, when you have a smaller organization, a more niche kind of charitable intent or focus, the key there is to then to find ways to navigate to anybody that is you know, open to hearing the stories. And I think that's where, I don't know if any of you know Norma Cameron, but I learned so much from Norma Cameron, who is famous for introducing narrative philanthropy or storytelling into the whole process. If you can tell those stories, both in a way that are, you know, logical, but more emotive, you know, so a combination of both of your organization, you're going to reach people, advisors, etc., who will share those stories with others because they're a great story. The other thing is finding out, I mean, if you have a situation where your charity is dealing with a rare disease, clearly you all know this as fundraisers, you find those families that have been impacted by those diseases, and then you find within them who are their advisors and what kind of charitable intent have they put in place, and can they have access to those various advisors to help promote the stories and keep that going for the rest of their clients. It's never as easy as if you're with a big hospital or a big university. It's almost like, they just have to hang up a shingle and money flows in. I know it's not as easy as that. I'm just being facetious, but when you're working with a smaller organization that's more in a niche, it feels that way for sure. But there are ways of making yourself and your intent shine in that same way. And the other thing is, I guess, this is where social media really helps a lot. When you have a niche area of intent, building an online component, a social media component that really is a focus for people that have been impacted by something that's niche, you will attract the people that you need to be looking at. And if you can find within their advisors or show this to advisors and share those stories a bit. It's all about the storytelling, and that's not an easy thing for people to learn if you're not a natural storyteller. But trust me, narrative philanthropy and Norma Cameron, I'm sure there's still things on the CAGP website to help you navigate some of that and really drill into what is going to make an advisor listen to what you have to say from the perspective of your charity.
So Carla, we have a couple more questions, but we're pretty much out of time. I'm just going to throw one at you really quickly because I think you can answer it pretty quickly, and then maybe anybody else could just email you afterwards.
Sure.
Are there additional resources to learn more about this topic, and where can I read the study you conducted?
So this study is on the CAGP website. If you Google "Doing Good for Business CAGP," it should come up, and it's free access to anybody. Is anybody else doing this kind of research? No. How frustrating is that? It took a lot. I know Ruth McKenzie really spearheaded this, and it took her a long time to amass enough money to cobble it together, to put this research into place. And to be completely honest, from a researcher's perspective, this is a labor of love from my perspective. I'm certainly not making big dollars doing this, and so it really requires more understanding that we need more research and more people or organizations to step up to the plate and finance the research. But this is one of a kind, really. There's no research looking at this particular topic, and aside from the two that I just gave you, and that's why we did the research. There's a huge gap.
Thank you so much, Carla. I think we're going to have to end it here. If anybody has more questions for Carla, please feel free to email her. She'd love to hear from you. When the email ends, you will receive an email with a link to complete a short survey at some point this afternoon. So if you could please take a moment to respond to it, that would be amazing. Please join us in 3 weeks for our next webinar called A Gift Acceptance PMP Tune-Up, presented by Dwayne Osborne. This will be on Wednesday, May 29th at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Also, keep your eyes open on our website, as we're really soon about to open registration for the next Strategic Gift Planning Bootcamp taking place at the end of October in Montebello, Quebec, as well as a bonus original Canadian gift planning course slated for the end of September in Saskatoon. You can find more details about all these events on our website, and of course, you can contact me anytime. So thank you so much, Carla, for presenting this wonderful webinar. It's been really terrific. So I've got some great questions. And I thank you so much for putting all this hard work into this research as well. So I wish you and everyone a wonderful rest of the week.
Thanks, Erin. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.